day I wake up is another blessing. Thankful every second, getting God's protection. I lost connection in the desert, I had no reception. But in that time alone, I probably learned 1,000 lessons. I used my time for introspection and some self-reflection, and analyzed a couple ways to conquer my depression. Everything doesn't happen the way we plan it to, but if we harvest energy, then we can plan it too. So take a look in my eyes, that's where the story...
What's this? It's about patch news, more patch news? Didn't we just hear, what? Isn't that what we just heard about? What's this about? Let's see.
Okay, the major news today is that the patch that they said they were going to be releasing has a lot of changes, including monster density. There's even one change they didn't mention in the patch notes, which is that your horse is going to be able to blast through barricades when you hit the space bar. That's awesome. There's major changes to like Sorcerer, Barbarian,
this is all items, the notes that dropped.
Being changed a little bit, etc. So we're going to break all that down and more. Let's get going. Looks like we have the patch notes have just been released. We're going to be going through each one of these classes in detail on the live stream directly after posting this video. So if you want to see and talk about all of these, you can find that in the description, the pinned comment, if you have any particular questions. But essentially, this is what they talked about in the previous campfire chat. They said they were going to try to stick to improving both the Sorcerer as well as the Barbarian. And you can see what they say is they want to improve the Sorcerer's late game survivability and also adjust some of the class mechanics so that when you get some power in other areas, you're not necessarily taking it away from other areas in order to accomplish that. They want it to feel better going into the late game. They also said they want to strengthen builds that aren't reaching a high power level and diversify the use cases for legendary items and other effects. So we're going to briefly just kind of scroll through these and see if they're sticking to what they already said with their patch notes. These look basically...
I must have did this the whole other video too. I forgot to put my camera on the other side. Spawn wave. You ruined me. Alright, let's get back to it.
All the same. The Fury increase, adding the Berserking, the vulnerable duration, and then some significant increases in damage ratios. You can see here we have the passive bonus of damage reduction. We have this big overpowering increase here. Bleed damage from critical damage bonus, walking arsenal, Berserking damage increase on unconstrained. The legendaries look like they're sticking to the same as well. Ancestral Force is getting an increase. Thorns is getting an increase, which is actually quite interesting. Core skills cost to refund increase.
This is all your buffs.
Here, Unrelenting Fury cost tomorrow and also grants bonuses to monsters. So I'm not really seeing anything in here. And look, they do have that Earthquake damage reduction, while in Earthquake increased as well from 515 to 1525. So that's a nice increase in terms of damage reduction, and then damage bonus in Earthquake is increased as well. They were talking about how they actually want to get away from basically the flat damage codex items or just aspects in general being trash, so they're trying to fix some of that. And then you can see uniques here. The Fields of Crimson damage increased. Damage from enemies standing in the pool increased. Rupture cooldown affix replaced with bonus critical strike damage. So they are effectively attempting to make their uniques actually usable. You can see the Hellhammer one was the one they talked about before, where they're going to replace crowd control with bonus critical strike damage, which is again a much better multiplier. Physical damage affix replaced with vulnerable for Ramaladi Magnum Opus. Good lord, I butchered that one. 100,000 steps attacks reduce evades cooldown affix replaced with bonus evade charges. That is actually significantly better. And then damage against stun affix replaced with bonus movement speed. So that is actually significantly better. And then we have basic skill damage affix replaced with cooldown reduction. You know what's interesting to me is they like nerf things like cooldown reduction with the bonus critical strike, but even they recognize that you have to have these as the modifiers. So now instead of giving them the new buffed crowd control enemy or physical damage or something like that, they go right back to where we're all pigeonholed. So it's not actually, I mean, the modifiers were a problem in the previous patch, but we're all pigeonholed. We have to have vulnerability. We have to have bonus critical strike damage. Even they recognize that. In order to make items good, they basically have to add that, which is why they add vulnerable damage here and bonus critical strike damage. So I just wanted to call that out and see that's kind of funny. We're trying to get away from these things, but then they realize in order for items to be good, they have to literally add them on there. So I think that obviously we probably missed the mark in terms of like actually trying to change the way things are, and hopefully we see changes to things like overpowering, etc. Now I know the rogues were getting some changes. There was a couple of these that I thought were kind of nice. I'm not going to go through all of these, which is the Siphoning Strikes. Lucky hit chance increased from 75 to 85%. I know people were saying Siphoning Strikes was quite important and you couldn't really use it as much anymore, so at least that got a little bit of a buff. The Elusive Menace, no longer you have to be close to them, and then you automatically drop a Smoke Grenade at the end of dash. Smoke Grenade reduces cooldown by 0.4 to 0.6 seconds per target, up to 2-3 seconds. So only a couple small changes on the legendaries. And then on the uniques here, all stat affix replaced with vulnerable damage. So once again, we add that. And then ultimate damage replaced with cooldown, which is the third one. They nerfed cooldown, vulnerable, and critical strike damage, and they're adding those affixes right back on the uniques in order to make them good. So I think that's still kind of funny. So Druid is I'm obviously going to be interested in. Spirit gain, I'm never going to complain about getting more spirit. You can argue whether it's enough, but I always like seeing more spirit. We have buffs to wolves because the companion druid is basically trash. So we have buffs across the board that looks like to try to make everything from ravens, etc. better. I do like this one, which is rabies. The damage over time increased from 76 to 110%. That's a pretty significant buff in my own personal opinion. So I like to see that because I think rabies is a build that, how do we put it? The damage over time stuff now doesn't really feel as good as just flat damage because you literally have to wait for it to happen. And if you can one-shot a mob, why would you want to one-shot a mob and then wait for them to die from the bleed, unless we're talking like Poison Rogue or something? So I actually quite like seeing this. And Poison Creeper, etc. People have been using just to add poison just in order to get like the Envenom procs, etc. from multiplying type of damage. So it's cool to see we have some more poison options potentially being added here. Paragon Lightning Resilience rare node. Okay, so it goes from 4% to 6%. So maximum life bonus being increased. It'll be interesting how this pairs with Temerity, since Temerity now have maximum life. So maybe maximum life being a little bit better here. Legendaries, Aspect of Metamorphic Stone, Spirit cost reduction reduced, the damage dealt 80 to 100% to 120. That's actually pretty decent. And then we have Aspect of the Alpha going from 75 100 to 90 150. Okay,
I think I used
so a smaller 15% bump up there. And then Restore Gain on Mango Aspect going from 1 to 3. That's a pretty significant change in terms of resource gain. Not sure if that's going to be enough that it makes me super excited by that, but that's actually, I mean, maybe it does actually. A 3x multiplier on that, go from 1 to 3. Okay. And then we have the class overload mechanic, the lightning one there. Lucky hit chance from 20-40%. I don't really think I've ever seen anybody use that. I don't know if anyone's going to use it now. Maybe. Doesn't feel like I would still want to use that, but let's continue here. Sorcerer is going to be the other major change they were talking about. Obviously, they're doing the same things it looks like that they said they were going to do in the previous campfire chat, which is effectively Firebolt generates mana now, casting Fireball increased duration, critical strike damage increase. They're basically buffs across the board for fire and lightning. Again, if you want to see all of the breaks down, you want to talk about all this more in detail, you can come by the live stream. There are a lot of changes in here, but effectively the TLDR of all of this was it looks like they're trying to make lightning and fire better. Ice Shard seems to be like the build that everyone's using for Sorcerer, so they're trying to add more in there. John, you gotta use the ice. You're gonna know this damage reduction increases a lot of these within the Paragon boards. They're trying to give Sorcerer some innate damage reduction itself, since it seems to be like a fairly squishy class. So I do like to see Sorcerers getting some love. A lot of changes in these patch notes here. Now let's look at the uniques, because I'm curious about this. The damage penalty of the Gloves of Luminaire reduced from 65-55 to 45-35, so they're trying to get that to proc. Damage to stun affix is replaced with the lucky hit change to resource. Okay, so they're going from while stunned
this is stuff we're not even on yet.
You grab additional resources. Sort of like the Bone Spear, Necromancer. This would be a best in slot type of glove.
Did they fix the horse?
Where you would attempt to restore your extra damage to proc more often, is what it looks like to me. We're going to go through just very briefly the last Necromancer one here, because I've been playing a lot. As we go through here, Sever, so you can kind of double when those damage over. Lucky hit aspect. This goes from 20 30
talking about Necromancer, because he's playing Necromancer now, so he's trying to see what's
increasing monster density for the minions anyway. So they're kind of changing this so your minions don't just get monster density. We are increasing monster density in Nightmare Dungeons and in Hell Tides. This is the really big one here. This is what we're excited by. I physically counted the red dots. It seemed about 50%.
I did a Hell Tides the other day.
60 and more will have more health. Below 60 remain unchanged. 80 will have 50% increase. 100, 100% increase. 120, 120, and 150, 150% increased health. I think that's fine. I think bosses die as fast as elite mobs, and it's a little weird. And then level 35 and higher boss monsters have a 100% chance to drop legendary items. This is a big W. Treasure Goblins We now have an increased legendary drop chance from 6 to 14. So early killing treasure goblins are better now. And then you're guaranteed at 15 plus to get a legendary. This is good because treasure goblins felt terrible. I'm going to be honest. This is actually a good change. I'm really excited by that one. Legion events are now more rewarding.
I agree. Treasure goblins did feel horrible.
So there's more reasons to do those. Now you see them as low dopamine legendary drops. You love to see that, especially early when legendaries were still kind of hard to get. They made multiple improvements on how damage and other effects interact with active barriers. So bonus damage or bonus effects that applied on hit or when dealing damage will now apply that same effect through barriers. Oh, that is cool. Okay, because like remember before you have the butcher show up and you have a big shield and you can't do like your bonus effects, etc. So example, the exploit Paragon Griff will now apply vulnerable to enemies that have an active barrier. So that's a pretty big change. Cheat death will now work properly when the player has an active barrier. This also affects PvP play. Wait, cheat death effects will now work properly when the player has an active barrier. I didn't know that the cheat death effects weren't working for this. This is actually good for me to know. I'm going to be honest. I'm kind of glad I read that there. Varsham will now break through any bone wall segments he dashes through. That makes sense. You can't pin him in. Cost of refunding skill and Paragon points has been reduced. This is what they're talking about, the respec and cost reduction. And they said it starts at smaller, lower levels and hits a maximum of 40% at level 100. So it's 40% of what it used to be, basically. Example, level 50 is 12%, 60 is 18%, 70 is 24%, and 80 is 30%. So these are significant reductions. For up to a 40% reduction here.
That's cool,
in terms of cost to respec. I think that's quite good.
But who's
we've increased the
that
stack
often?
limit from elixirs to 2099. Yep, that seemed good. Additional stash tab can now be purchased with stash code, so we actually get new stash tabs. Very exciting. We have restored the cast time to leave dungeons back to 3 seconds. This was an issue they said was ability to use as a method of easy escape, particularly for hardcore players. We found that this outweigh that their.
Speaking of hardcore, should we try a hardcore? Should we try a hardcore run? See how long we last before we die? I think I'm gonna try a hardcore run next week. We'll see. Change
outweighed the downside of the game feeling less responsive. So we've heard your feedback on revising this. Basically, they took an L on this one because people didn't like this. I thought it was a dumb change personally. Malignant Hearts here. Yep, this is the one they talked about before. The Caged Heart of Spell Breaking. Upon taking elemental damage, you now gain 10 to 20% reduction for 5 seconds. And then Temerity. This is the change, like I was mentioning earlier in this video, that is going to be based upon maximum life as well. So it looks like this, they actually stayed very tight to the gameplay changes they mentioned. So we did get
what about the horse?
Communication
Weren't they going to do something with the horse?
Are actually going to be, and it looks like they stayed pretty true to that. Some bug fixes here. I'm not going to go through all of these. It looks like there's a pretty good amount of bug fixes. I will say there's one other bug at the moment that I'm not going to explain how to do. But from what I understand, there's currently an active bug in the game that eternal characters are trading with seasonal characters and dumping gold and stuff like that.
Yeah, we're about to watch that video too.
A drama going on about that. So I think they're probably working on that as well. If you want to discuss these patch notes in more detail, or if you have questions, come on by the live stream, which will be in the description as well as the pinned comment. But in terms of these balance changes, these are what they said they were going to have in the game. They stuck pretty much true to these. I don't really see any changes in any of these characters that weren't things they said they were going to have happen. I think we got a few more listed in terms of uniques from the Barbarian because they absolutely needed this. This patch will be coming out on the 8th. It's just the patch notes today. So on the 8th, this will be a patch.
I think these notes came out last week, so
at that time,
the patch comes out tomorrow.
Finally play and try out the Barbarian, as we'll see if it's a good experience from the beginning. With that being said, I love you all. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you on the live stream.
All right. What other character do I want to try out other than the rogue? Maybe barbarian. Well, sorcerer actually. Now that it's might be good, actually.
I'm hiding out, wilding out, cooling down, collecting thoughts till I find my route. And if they catch me, they'll be finding out what I'm about. Until then, I'm riding out. I'm hiding out, wilding out, cooling down, collecting thoughts till I find my route. And if they catch me, they'll be finding out what I'm about. Until then, I'm riding out, riding out. Check it out. I'm a desperado, I'm living it in real life. What's next to follow? I hit the bottle.